My name is Martin Jones. I'm from the University of Edinburgh. I work as an integration architect in the enterprise architecture team. We try to take a holistic look at the services and the businesses across the university and find the best way of supporting them. So today I wanted to talk about how we process online payments, and effectively we can break that into two major types of payments, or two ways of collecting payments. First one is immediate payments, where we've got a shopping cart. You want immediate feedback. This is all happening in real time. The second way of collecting payments is through mandates, through direct debits, recurring card payments, and that's where someone authorizes the university to collect money on their behalf. So two very different styles of payment collection. If I look at processing real-time payments, nothing new here. I mean, you've all been through shopping cart experience, but I think what I would really like to highlight on this slide is this separation of, in the middle, we've got two services. We've got a finance API service and we've got a payment service. So our finance API is dealing directly with the finance system. When the customer comes into an application, they're retrieving their data from the finance system through that API, and they get the data specific to them. So they've got their data. It's easy to kind of say, well, here's all my list of transactions, here are invoices that I need to pay. It's very easy to create a shopping cart from that, and it's very easy to kind of put that together. Now, the key thing here is that you've got something that they want to pay, but how do they pay it? Separating out the payment service means that the shopping cart can be oblivious to who's collecting that payment. We can have multiple payment providers. We can configure. So what we need to do is the shopping cart then says, right, I've got something that someone wants to buy, contacts the payment service, and the payment service says, yes, you are this system. We're going to send you off to this payment provider, because we could have multiple payment providers. That payment provider wants information in this format, and it's all that configuration is abstracted away, getting back to Sanka's mantra about abstraction. That's abstracted away. They're sent off to the payment provider seamlessly. They go through that payment process, and when that payment process is complete, it then comes back to the payment service. Now, the reason it goes back to the payment service is that the payment service then takes responsibility for knowing that, okay, this payment needs to be sent to this system. And as you can see, when they've gone through that journey, they come back, the payment service notifies the finance service through an internal connection. So the customers only had read access to their data. The write access to send that payment back as an internal process, which comes from the payment service back into the finance API, then goes straight back out to the finance system. It all happens in real time, and the user starts their journey again. They get a fresh copy of their data, and they can see that payment there. The other key thing I want to add into this process is, from the time that their payment has been collected by the payment provider, that money's in the bank. So we need to make sure we've got guaranteed delivery. So from that call back to the payment service, we acknowledge straight away. We say, thank you very much. We'll handle it from here. And this is where we use message queues for guaranteed delivery. So that if for any reason that finance system is blocking the call, it could be that someone's got the customer's record open, and there's a lock, so you can't push that data in at the time. It will sit in that message queue and keep going around until that payment can be processed. But I think that this has been an extremely effective system for us, this architecture design. Later I'll kind of give you some figures, but it is really reliable and very flexible. And the other beauty is that creating this payment service, creating them as separate services means that you don't need to touch them very often. We hardly touch them at all, because the last thing you want to be doing is interrupting people giving you money. So, processing payment mandates. So this is, we're not getting money at this point. This is just someone saying, well, here's my credit card, or here's my bank account details. Can we just set up a payment plan and you can come and collect the money at certain times of the year? So we work with our payment provider that this doesn't need to happen in real time. People will fill in a mandate, we'll get it the next day, we get a file. We work with the payment provider to make sure that there was a standard way, regardless of whether it was a recurring card payment mandate or a direct debit, that all our files would come through in a consistent format. They promised they would look after validation, so that we always knew that the customer number would be validated, we knew that the bank account would be validated, we knew that the card would be in the right format, that there was some kind of check to make sure that they said, who they were. So we thought, well, this is fantastic. Both the business analyst and the solution architect looked at that and said, yeah, this will be a piece of cake. Everything's validated, it all comes across. This is just going to be a simple file upload. Like we'll grab the file, we'll loop through the records on the file, and we'll just upload them to our finance system. That'll be a doddle, easy peasy, right? Well, this is the workflow for each record that needs to go in to create a mandate. And I've got different colors for different parts of the process. Terms in terms like, do they have a receipt method? Does the bank account exist in our system? There's a few issues right at the very beginning. Because when the system went live, we put all this logic, we thought, well, this is simple. We'll put all this logic in our integration. It can handle all that. But when this started to evolve, we started getting more and more nervous. And one of the very first things that we've got there is, does the mandate already exist? Now, what we were finding in the data that was coming across was like, a customer would come in, they'd enter their details, and they'd submit it and go, yep, no, that's all fine. And they go, oh, hang on a minute. What was the name I put on that bank account? Was it Mr. M. Smith, or was it Mr. Mike Smith? Because the bank account has to be, the name on the bank account has to be right. So they'd use the back browser, they go and check the data. Oh no, it's fine. I'll just hit it, submit again. So we would get two records. Which record is correct? I don't know. The other thing we'd find is they would go and create a direct debit and they're going, actually, you know what, I don't want to do direct debit. I just want to do a recurring card payment mandate. So, I'll forget, I'll just go and create a card payment mandate instead. So now you've got 3 records for the one customer. Which one do you process? And how do you make sure, if you process all of them, how do you make sure that you process them in the right order? Because direct debits and recurring card payments come through in different files. So that immediately kind of started raising some red flags. The other thing that we've got, you see across the top these little red boxes saying raise error. There are so many data conditions. We've got valid data, but it can't be processed. The example I used before about customers' account being edited by someone. So we go to process that mandate, and it won't save. It won't, because the account's locked. It could be that especially where we've got online banks now, like cards like Monzo cards, these virtual banks, a a new branch can be created, overnight, and your customer might sign up with it, but that bank and branch isn't in our system yet, so we'll go to load that transaction in and it will fail because we can't create a mandate against that bank account because that bank account hasn't been created. That's an admin task. So there were so many points of failure for valid data that I thought, and they needed the business to be involved to correct that. So I kind of took the business aside and said, listen, this isn't our original plan, like this file upload is not going to work. We need to look at how we're going to do this. So there's a really good quote here. Dumb pipes, smart endpoints. If you've got business logic that needs interaction from the business, stick it in a place where the business can see it and where the business can interact with it. Business aren't going to interact with an API. They're not going to interact with... So this is where we need to get that idea of abstraction. So what we needed to do was we needed to create a business-facing application. We needed to simplify our pipes. So our API calls are now much simpler. We've taken all that logic out of our integration and we've put it in a business-facing web application. I call this application the ATM, just as a pun on finance, cash ATMs. But it's the automated transaction managers is what it really stands for. But it gives the business visibility of the errors at every stage. That previous slide that we had with that complicated workflow, it shows the business at every point, like what happens as each transaction comes in. And it will also email the business each day and say, look, file came in, we ignored so many records, we processed so many, but there's like 3 or 4 that need your attention. And if you log in, you'll see what they are. It keeps our keeps our APIs and microservices really, really simple. It's fire and response. There's no message queues needed here because we've got that logic in the application. What does it look like? So as the files come in, you can see the date it came in, what the file type is, the count, and the status. It gives the business meaningful error messages. The top right-hand side, so if I start on this side, this is the one where we've got an overview of the whole transaction file. So you can say there were 13 records processed, one record was ignored, and 1 failed. And if you look at the failures, some example failures, it will say things like, the customer account didn't exist. So at some point, we found that customers might have signed up for a direct debit for the wrong thing. We had students signing up for nursery fees direct debits instead of student fee direct debits, just by mistake. It could be that there was a problem with at certain times of the year, being a university, we have an embargo, so we're not allowed to, we have to stop processing student data because we need to wait for a certain date when all this information is released publicly. So we have to sit on that and we can't move it until that point. But in the meantime, like someone might have thought, geez, I really want to go to Edinburgh University. I'm just going to sign up for accommodation just in case I get my place. And so they'll create a direct debit for accommodation, but their accommodation account hasn't been created in the system yet. So it's those types of errors. The error down on the bottom there that you can see is a much more complicated error message which comes straight back from the system. But if you delve into the details of it, this is the one that says the account's locked, like someone else is using it. So if they just hit a retry button on this, it should go through absolutely fine. So that gave us a full audit on each record. Finance were very happy. and we gave them the ability to kind of search across the whole of the transactions, all the transactions coming in. And yeah, they're thrilled. The head of accounts receivables reached out to me, and we got an award. It's had a massive reduction in the amount of support calls. It has made everything, all the transactions flow through much more smoothly. And they're already thinking of enhancements for it. So for other systems that are processing directly into finance, we still get the details of those transactions in a file every day. And they're saying, well, can we start to use this application to actually go and validate that all the other transactions were loaded in correctly as well? So not just the transactions that we've asked you to process, but can you kind of use this as an audit for everything that's going through? So it's been a big success. To give you an idea, so we launched this at the end of October last year, so it's not quite a year, but it's already processed £280 million. There's in the region of 257,000 individual transactions going through, and of those, about 30,000 are mandates. So there's some good numbers. Of the 280 million, about 220 million are real-time payments, and there's been hardly any issues with that. So I think that's kind of pretty much covered what I wanted to speak about. Am I off the hook? Thank you very much.